What was the issue that Gideon Falter faced? Can you just explain, in your view, what the issue is here?
Yeah, so he had been to a regular Saturday synagogue service, and of course, uh, any Jew who is observant does not drive on a Saturday, so getting from one place to another required walking.
Yeah.
As he was walking to, and I'm not sure where it was he was headed, but as he was walking to his destination, he was on Aldwych and noticed that the marchers started heading towards him and a few friends who were with him. They crossed the road to avoid being trapped against buildings and unable to get to where they needed to go. At that point, the officers grab him, pull him aside, as seen in the video. The officers blocked him, wouldn't let him to continue. Then the crowd started to thicken and people stopped and yelled abuse at him. Disgusting, lock them up, scum, Nazis. Police took no action against them, nor did they take any action against the man that stood next to Gideon and very menacingly threatened to follow him around right next to an officer. So no action was taken against them. But the Jewish man, the openly Jewish man who just wanted to get to where he was going, was threatened with arrest.
Now, is that the crux of the issue, Stephen, that there's a perception here amongst some people that there's a double standard being applied, that if you are an openly Jewish person and you're trying to go about your business, that you can't do that, versus if you're on a march and you're shouting completely unacceptable things to someone else that the police are doing? Is that the crux of the issue, that there's a double standard being applied here?
Well, that's one of the things that has emerged from this, and it absolutely is an issue. Another issue is the fact that the policing strategy that has been implemented by Sir Mark Rowley clearly discriminates against innocent Jewish Londoners.
How, Stephen?
Well, if I'm wearing a kippah and want to get around somewhere near one of these marches, my presence is likely to be deemed provocative, because the very sight of me might incite violence. And therefore, I am the one likely to be arrested, not the people who are threatening harm.
Stephen, I think that the use of the word provocative by Matt Twist in the statement was very regrettable, and I don't think that should be. I think that was wrong. But I just want to put this to you: do you think that the police, in any situation of public order, have to make judgments on the balance between free speech, which they have to police this. I mean, they don't make the laws. They have to police this so-called free speech on one hand, and they also have to protect the safety of the public on the other. This is exactly why, for example, I could imagine exactly the same thing happening to me if I turned up in a shalwar kameez, Pakistani national dress, at an EDL rally in central London. I mean, I would not be surprised if the police did exactly the same to me, or to someone wearing a hijab trying to cross a rally that was full of EDL people for my own protection.
If they were to do that, they would be absolutely wrong. Their job is to enforce the law. And anybody who is likely to be a victim of hate should not be the one who is threatened with arrest. The people threatening violence are the ones that should need to be dealt with.
But Stephen, I understand. If someone on a march is specifically shouting anti-Semitic, making anti-Semitic statements, of course they should be arrested, and they should be the full force of the law should be applied against them. If that is indeed what happened, what you're describing, that's absolutely unforgivable. But if you're dealing with a mass protest, the police do not have the numbers to monitor every single person on the protest. There could be errant elements on any protest. There could be errant elements at a football match, for heaven's sake. The police have to make judgments about keeping people safe. And in this particular case, was the intention of the officer not simply to keep Gideon Falter safe?
The problem is we have to go back 6 months to the second of these marches.
Yeah.
When Sir Mark Rowley began what is a track record of gaslighting the Jewish community. We have been told time and time again that Jews have nothing to fear from these marches. We have been told that genocidal anti-Semitic chants that calls for jihad, the fact that there are swastikas, the fact that there are revocations of medieval blood libel, the fact that there are people saying Hitler was right, does not mean these marches are unsafe for Jews to be around. And we have been repeatedly gaslit about that. Now, what's emerged from what happened yesterday is that these marches are not safe from, sorry, not what happened yesterday, what happened last Saturday, is that these marches are not safe for Jewish people to be around by the Metropolitan
But that's not true, Stephen, because I've heard from a number of people on these marches that a number of Jews are marching alongside them perfectly peacefully. So, look, in this particular case, I don't know.
I need to address that.
We
know that during the anti-Semitism scandal in the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn, there was a fringe minority of Jews that stood, that stayed there, denied the anti-Semitism, and actually made the situation worse for ideological reasons revolving around the Israel-Palestine debate. They are a tiny minority of the Jewish community. They are the same people who are on these marches. Right. They will be anti-Zionist Jews. In a recent poll that we did last November, we did a statistically weighted poll of 3,700 members of the British Jewish community. Only 6% said they were not Zionist. So I think it's, I know, I'm not saying that you're doing this, but a lot of people are being disingenuous. By saying, oh, look at these Jews welcoming.
So I understand. So in the same way, let me put it to you, Stephen. If there was, and I understand completely the point you're making, if there was a mass march with many people who were pro the fact that Palestinians should be removed from the West Bank, for example, if let's say there was a theoretical march with people arguing this, right, going on, which hasn't happened in the country, thankfully, but happens regularly in Israel. If that was to happen here and someone came along who looked visibly Arab and the police said this to them, would they not be acting out of their own interest in that particular case? I mean, this is not a case, in my view, of the police trying to prevent ordinary law-abiding Jewish citizens going around their business. This was a specific case in relation to a march that was going on where the police had to make a judgment call.
But how do you account for the fact that there were police officers surrounding Gideon Falter and threatening to arrest him while people in close also standing next to officers were hurling anti-Semitic abuse
if that happened,
and they were completely left to their own devices.
That should not have been the case. That should not have been the case.
And that is why that is why this has become a major scandal.
But you see, no one's really focused on that particular point that you're raising. The point that I'm focusing on is that if a law-abiding Jewish citizen wants to go about their business in the country and they feel that they can't, that is a serious issue. If they're trying to cross a line in the middle of a rally, that is something slightly different, in my view, because the public have to keep the police have to keep public order. Now, if you're saying that it's a slightly different issue here of double standards being applied, then we're getting to the crux of the issue. That's something that's not come out. What's being talked about here is that Gideon Falter himself is saying, I, as a Jewish person, and I quote what he's saying here, he's been saying that I can't go around my business as a Jewish individual in this thing. This is absolutely, I quote, this is absolutely appalling victim blaming by the Assistant Commissioner. What has dented Jewish London's confidence is that the Met is not taking us or this video public, but the actions of the Met's officers telling me that I cannot be in the area whilst openly Jewish. That's the point that he's making, not the point you're making.
Well, I think both points are equally important and equally valid. Absolutely. At the same time that Gideon was trying to cross the road, there were other people being allowed to cross the road. And he was this wasn't some kind of counter protest. He wasn't carrying any signs, wearing any badges. He wasn't chanting anything. He just had a kippah on his head, a small bag with a Star of David on it, and he wanted to get from A to B. And if that is threatening to these marches, then the police, as we have been asking for months now, need to use their powers under the Public Order Act to either curtail the size of the marches so that they can police them properly or ban them.
But you see, this is the thing that, I mean, we wouldn't ban an EDL march, would we? And if I was turning up, as I say, as a person of Pakistani heritage in a shalwar kameez, I would expect the police to protect my security and tell me to get out of the area and don't cross in the middle of a bunch of EDL people walking down Whitehall.
Well, I don't know if an EDL march would turn out in the kind of numbers that we've seen on these.
Well, we had members of them around the Cenotaph, so-called protecting the Cenotaph, didn't we?
They were,
I mean, if I turned up on that day, Stephen, come on, let's be honest about it. If I turned up on that day wearing Pakistani national dress, I mean, I would be taking my life into my own hands, wouldn't I? Or not? Or should we just ban the EDL from allowing to express themselves because the police can't guarantee my safety? Then all freedom of speech should be banned on that basis, even if we don't like it. But I don't like what the EDL stand for. I don't like the fact that people are chanting.
Freedom of speech is one thing. This isn't the point. The point is that Gideon was told that they could not protect him. that the marcher that something was likely to happen within that march because they were so outraged at the sight of a Jewish man that violence was likely to ensue. This has nothing to do with freedom of expression.
But Stephen, don't the police do that? Wouldn't they even do that on certain football matches when there's a particularly heightened football match by keeping fans separate from two clubs that completely detest each other? I mean, how is this any different to that?
Got nothing to this. That has nothing to do.
No, but it does have everything to do with it, Stephen.
Racial or religious identity.
No, but Stephen, it does have everything to do with it because it's exactly the point I'm making that I would not turn up at an EDL march. And if the police told me this, I might not like it, but I'd say, well, look, fair enough. If you're acting out of my own security, I get it. I don't like it. I should be able to go wherever I want. Fine. But fair enough. I understand the point you're making. Stephen, let me just ask you this in conclusion. As a Jewish person in London, do you feel more insecure now than you did 6 months ago? Because the number of anti-Semitic incidents have gone through the roof and almost an increase of 600%. How are you feeling as a Jewish person in the UK at the moment?
I feel completely and utterly alarmed, disgusted, and horrified. We actually have, Jews being openly attacked in the streets. Not necessarily on these marches, although there has been some violence, but outside of these marches. And this is a direct result of the policing strategy, which has emboldened people to believe that they can act with impunity.
Should the Met Commissioner resign?
Yeah, absolutely. He's presided over the worst spike in anti-Semitism in London since records began. Okay. He's gaslit the Jewish community, and he's put his own officers in an appalling position. And that's one of the things that the video that you've seen demonstrates.
Stephen, thank you very much for joining, and peaceful Pesach to you as well when it comes.